thing. My name's Harriet Amelia Wessel. I graduated from the University of Aberdeen in 2009 with a degree in neuroscience and psychology.
Thank you very much. And why did you choose Aberdeen University?
So I went to school, actually high school for sixth form in Aberdeen, and I really enjoyed the city. I made lots of friends. And so when Aberdeen came up as an option, it had a really good reputation for science. I knew I wanted to do a science degree, and I thought maybe I wanted to do medicine, but I didn't get the A levels I needed to do medicine. So I thought next best thing is to do biomedical science,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to go to the best university I could get into, and that was Aberdeen. So.
Yeah. Thank you. And why did you decide to study neuroscience initially, but then switch to law?
So, as I mentioned, I think I wanted to be a doctor. So,
Yeah.
biomedical science was kind of the best option. And I was also pursuing a professional sports career at the same time. So, this seemed like a good choice. It was a pretty small degree. There was a pretty small cohort, so slightly easier to get into, but deceptively difficult to do. So, I think I bit off more than I could chew right at the beginning, but I really enjoyed it. Then after I graduated, I went into research. And after a few years of work, I realized that it was not for me. And I would quite like to instead switch tracks and become a lawyer instead.
Yes. Thank you. And what were some of your favorite memories from Aberdeen?
I think I probably my friends, and my academic advisor. He helped me through a really very difficult time in my third year of of undergraduate. And I had a lot of fun playing sports and joining the societies and just generally getting involved with the university. It was a great time.
Yes. Thank you. And what are some core skills and like values that you gained at the University of Aberdeen?
I think principally like really hard work pays off, and developing relationships both with the people that you're in your classes and with your professors are really important. I had a placement in my final year in a lab setting, and I used to be terrified of public speaking, and they forced us to present a paper. You used to have to take turns, and there are only about four of us, so you had to do it once a month. And so things like that, just getting out of your comfort zone, getting on with it, having people around you. And that's been really useful in my career.
Yeah. Thank you. And how did the education at Aberdeen differ from educations you received from other universities?
That's a good question. So I've attended obviously my undergraduate degree at Aberdeen and then law school both in the UK and then in America. So it's been pretty different. I would say it was a really good foundation, but it was very different. Like very, very focused, it was a bit more relaxed. It was very much, you're going to get on with it. If you're going to turn up to class, you're going to turn up to class. Whereas at other places, your attendance was more taken. And I think Aberdeen allows you a lot of autonomy. And so, you're in charge right from the get-go, whether or not you're going to take this seriously or not. And I think for some people that's really good. And in some ways, people maybe need to take charge of their own lives. But that's part of learning and part of going to university and making the most of it, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And did you participate in any student clubs or societies?
Yes, I played hockey and netball for the university, and went on tours and did all of that kind of stuff. We had a great time.
Yeah. And did you participate in any internships or part-time jobs or volunteering experiences as a student?
Yes, kind of. I did a lab-based internship at the university. But again, because my focus was on science at Aberdeen, I focused mostly my internships were later when I went to law school.
Mhm. I see. And did you get any licenses or certificates? And do you think certificates or licenses important for lawyers?
Yes. So, well, I'm a solicitor in England and Wales,
Mhm.
and I'm an attorney in Texas. Both um, absolutely required. You cannot practice without those things.
Yeah.
But I think if I may piggyback off your question about internships, I think if you are in a career like accountancy or lawyer, you want to be a lawyer or you want to do something like that,
Yeah.
even if you're not yet doing that course, it's a really good idea to go and try and get that practical experience. Even if you write to a law firm and say, hey, I really want to do this, but I haven't yet taken that course, or I may be wanting to do the conversion course at Aberdeen, for example.
Yeah.
Please, can I come in and just do some work experience for you? Even if it's, doing photocopies and making coffee, they will usually at least, have a phone call with you, maybe meet you, maybe, give you some opportunities. And I think those kinds of things are really, really valuable.
Yes.
Because that gets you in the door, because you need that experience to even get some of these licenses that you require to practice.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And what is Norton Rose Fulbright?
Norton Rose Fulbright is a global law firm with offices around the world.
Yes. And can you explain your role and responsibilities within the company?
Sure. So I'm a tax lawyer. I'm an associate attorney, which is really an American expression. Basically means I'm not a partner.
Yeah.
The partners are essentially the managers or the shareholders of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm technically an employee. I work in the project finance group. We work predominantly with renewable energy companies, lenders, so banks, and other financing parties, basically through funding and developing renewable energy projects, helping them negotiate through complex, contracts, tax laws, and through controversies and litigation with US and state government.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. And how does your job now differ from the jobs you had before?
Well, I'm in a different country for a start, but I would say it's very different from being a professional horse rider, which is what I did when I first left university.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very different from being a research scientist, which is the other thing I used to do. It's very people focused, and I think you do a lot of writing, you do a lot of speaking, you've got to build a lot of relationships, and I think that's probably very similar to a lot of things that people will do, whether you go into banking, whether you go into any kind of managerial job. But the hours are long. You've got to love it, and I do. I think it's very challenging. It's very logical. It's very maths and science based. You've really got to understand the technology that you're dealing with. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to advise at the high level that you need to.
Yes. And can you walk us through your day-to-day like tasks? What do you
Sure.
do? For example, like today, what's your day like?
So I think my day starts with opening my emails, and because we work across the world, I have clients across the world, so we have emails starting at 1 o'clock in the morning. We're on different coasts. We've got clients
Yeah.
in Australia, Hong Kong, etc. So usually dealing with that. Might have some meetings. I've got some meetings this afternoon. We do a lot via Zoom. I think COVID has opened up the world, so we do a lot virtually. We don't do nearly as much in person, but that's been nice because now we work a lot with people in different offices. There's a lot less barriers to working with different people, which I think is really nice. I do a lot of drafting. I'm currently drafting some clauses to a contract for a client, and reviewing some other provisions where basically the other party, the contractors, come back and said we disagree. So I've got to politely point out that we politely disagree with them. So that'll be nice. So yeah, it's a lot of sparring, very politely sparring in legal English.
That's very
That's my day.
And what was your proudest moment in your career?
Honestly, I think probably yesterday when I found out that I am being promoted
Oh,
to senior
congratulations.
associate. Because I think coming to the US from the UK, and I don't know if anyone else, just going to speak to the wider audience here, if you have come from another country and somebody has told you, oh, you're foreign or you're an international student, no one's going to take you seriously. I would just like to tell you that that's just not true. And you might have to work a bit harder. You might have to show other people that you're just as determined. You might have visa issues to overcome, but it's really, really nice when someone gives you the recognition that your, colleagues of the different nationality or the nationality the country you live in, get the same as you.
That's interesting. And for law students trying to get internships, what advice do you have how they can stand out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great question. So I think this works wherever you are. Write a good cover letter. We read them. People like me read them. They send them to us because they'll say, "Hey, your recruiting person will be the person on the front desk, and they will read it, and they will know if you've copied and pasted. They will know if you have just changed the firm name and said, I'm interested in doing corporate M&A at Denton's or wherever, and or Shepherd and Wedderburn, or whoever you are, and they know. So please don't do that because we know, and they go straight in the bin. So what you want to do is you want to write a good cover letter that actually makes you sound interested in what that firm does, even if you're kind of faking it until you make it. That's okay. We all do it. And the other thing I would say that's really important is people like to hire people they like. So again, even if you are really shy, like I used to be, fake it, pretend, put a smile on your face, and try your very hardest to be the person you think they will like. Even if you can find some common ground about cats or dogs or goldfish, just really just try when you get a chance to meet someone. Ask them, do they have kids? Do they have pets? Do they like to go outside? What do they like to do? Try and find something you can relate to them on. It doesn't have to be creepy, but you can just somehow make that kind of connection, because they will remember you because you took an interest in them, because people like to talk about themselves. So yeah, those are my sort of top tips. One other thing is, this is really boring, but your grades will follow you for at least 4 or 5 years after you graduate. So do as well as you can. Not to say that it's everything, but it really, really helps, especially in law.
Interesting. And how important networking is in your industry?
Networking, I would say, is really important. But I think this is why this initiative, especially, is really great, because you have, people like me are willing to talk to people who are interested in doing what we do. So, if you can find someone, even if you find us on LinkedIn or you find us on the internet, reach out and ask, hey, would you be willing to have a virtual coffee with me? Would you be willing to talk about what you do? I'm interested. You already have something in common with the people that you went to university, the same university with, even if they graduated 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So make the most of those opportunities. But yeah, people, as I say, people like to hire people they like. And that usually means that they are friends with the people that maybe left their firm, or and so I think networking is really important, but not necessarily in the traditional sense. You don't have to go to every cocktail event. You can just, try and make friends across the internet as well.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And can you share any books or resources that were particularly beneficial in your career?
I think, well, like I say, LinkedIn is remarkably useful. I'm really kind of too old for TikTok, but I would say like anything like that can, where you can find what is everybody else doing? What's trending right now? What are people, get tips and tricks from YouTube. Look to see what are people recommending, because there is a ton of people out there. Once upon a time, we used to have to read books that told us how do we impress a partner. Now there are people out there telling you how to apply for a training contract on Instagram. That's awesome, because it's a lot more palatable. It's a lot nicer than reading like stuffy pages about how to write a contract contract, what I mean, training contract application cover letter. So I would honestly look at the types of media that interest you because you will then digest that better. So I think, yeah, that answer has changed definitely over these years. But look at the internet, look at social media, see who you vibe with, and see what they're doing, and try and find people closer to your demographic, and see what they're out there doing and what industries are you interested in. That will automatically make you more approachable and more interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great advice. And the next question is, how do you ensure good teamwork and communication within the teams you work in?
So I think the number one thing that I try to teach younger associates and people in my team is respect. Like respecting not only the people above you for sure, but the people below you too. Like I think you need to treat everyone with respect. And if you set that example within your team, it opens the door. Because if you're seen to be really respectful of if you're lucky enough to have an assistant, even if you share them with like five other people,
Yeah.
you're seen then to be someone people can come to. And then that helps because you need to be someone that people can come to. You need to model the behavior you want to see. So I think that's really, really important. And I think being responsive is very important. You don't need to respond within 2 seconds, but I think you need to be willing to, even if you just say, hey, I've received your email, I'm in the middle of something, but I'll get back to you. I think just being responsive, being aware, whilst also having boundaries so that you can also not burn yourself out. This is a pretty busy profession, so you want to have a life, you want to be able to enjoy your family and things as well.
Absolutely. And would you recommend your type of career to others?
Personally, I love it. I think it's not for everyone.
Mhm.
But maybe it's for, I think you've got to be pretty, I think you've got to be pretty driven. I think you've got to be pretty analytical to enjoy exactly what I do. But
Mhm.
then there's a ton of different law jobs out there, and so when people say to me, oh, people have said I'd never be a lawyer, it's, or those people tend to have unfortunately had, not positive experiences. I've loved every second of it. I've been a lawyer for 6 years. I think it's fantastic. So yes, highly, highly recommend. It's great.
And the next question is, what's your advice for law students who are studying at university but unsure what area of law to focus on?
Sure, absolutely. So I kind of a little bit like what I said before. Try and I think deeply about what interests you, what matters to you. Because once upon a time, I wanted to be a public defender. And so what that means in the Europe really is, I guess, going, working in legal aid. And in the UK, there is no legal aid really anymore for criminal defendants. So that's a very difficult thing to do. I worked actually in civil legal aid while I was at university in Glasgow. Um, and I changed my mind and I realized I could make a lot of difference if I worked for a big company or a big firm and did a lot of pro bono work. So figure out what matters to you and if there's a way of you making that work, because it might just be slightly different to the way you think it's going to work. You might be able to affect more people and help make more change in the way that you think, than the way you think you can. But again, look at the issues that bother you. Are you politically minded? Do you really enjoy the environment? Are you, do you really want to focus on, criminal law? Do you want to look at family? And I think if you're in Scotland, Scotland still has the training contracts, where you do certain seats. You might do 6 seats in 2 years. England sort of switched to a slightly different system, but they kind of do something very similar. So I think if you can go to a firm which will allow you to try lots of different things, I think that's really positive. But that may not be an option for everybody. So, try it and see. And if you can get an internship, even if it's, just for a few weeks, try as many different things as you can, because I think that's definitely getting a flavor for it would be ideal. Because you just don't know until you try.
Yeah. In your opinion, is it more difficult to become a lawyer in the United States rather than to be a lawyer in the UK?
It's very expensive to become a lawyer in America, especially as an international student, because you don't get the benefit of any scholarships, any financial aid. pretty much. I mean, there is obviously exceptions to the rule, but because we do not get any federal funding.
Yeah.
We can't get a student loan. We can't get any of those, and we certainly don't get in-state tuition unless you come and live here for a year beforehand. It's very much more expensive. It is a slightly more accessible system because we just have to do the education and then pass a big exam at the end of the day. It's a little bit more like the English system, but with that it is now, where it's all about exams and a certain amount of education. But I would say the UK is more accessible, but it's difficult. They're both difficult in their own ways. But I wouldn't let that put you off. Like you got to keep on trying, and you'll get there.
Okay, and two more questions. For
Sure.
somebody who completed their LLB, like Bachelor in Law in Scotland, what is
Mhm.
it to become a lawyer in the United States?
So I graduated in yeah, I graduated from so I did the conversion course in Scotland
Yeah.
because I already had my degree from Aberdeen. Thank you, Aberdeen, for that. So I came to the US actually 6 weeks after I graduated. It was wild. And I undertook two Masters of Law degrees, LLM degrees, one in US law and one in tax. So I did 18 months of study here. I only needed to do one, but because I wanted to specialize in tax, I realized about halfway through the first one that I really needed to have that extra specialty in order to get the job that I wanted.
Yeah.
So that's what I needed to do. And then at the end of those 18 months, I was then able to take what was then the Texas bar exam. It's still called the Texas bar exam, but it's a slightly different exam now that it's now the uniform bar exam. And you also have to take something called the MPRE, which is the multi-state professional responsibility exam, which basically is an ethics exam. You take those on different. It's like one's a 3-day exam and one's a 1-day exam. You have to pass the character and fitness. And then after that, 2 years after that, I went back to England and I took the English qualifying exams to become a solicitor, which took about 2 weeks, which is ridiculous.
That's very impressive. And the last question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
This too shall pass, because I am one of those people who, at times, especially in finals or exams, I felt like it was never going to end. And it will end. Like it will get better. It does get better. And there are times when I got a B or, heaven forbid, like a C. I used to think like this is never going to get any better. Like I'm doomed. Funnily enough, it hasn't followed me. It's not the end of the world. Like it's going to get better. And I just, for anyone who doesn't get the degree they want or the thing that they think they want, just keep on hustling because it's amazing what's out there. Another door will open and you should just keep trying.